The moment you try to say something about issues concerning and affecting Hindus in India, the left liberal cabal, the woke lobby, immediately tries to silence you, they try to shame you and shut you up. And how do they do that? Basically, by telling you that look, Hindus are a majority in India, you guys are the majority religion here, and India is anyways being ruled by a Hindu majoritarian government, so it's become a Hindu majoritarian state, and the government is all the time talking about the creation of a Hindu Rashtra. So look at how the minorities are being exploited, oppressed here, blah blah blah. So you guys are the perpetrators. Don't try to play the victim and just enjoy the advantages that you have as a Hindu majority in a Hindu Rashtra. Such is the explanation that the woke lobby and the left liberal cabal would give to Hindus to silence you. Now, the problem is that no matter how much you know and you realize, even if you realize that the arguments given by the left liberal cabal are, completely baseless and stupid, it's difficult for you to counter these so-called arguments simply because you do not have facts, you do not have any evidence to support your claims that Hindus are, not the oppressor, but they are rather the oppressed in a so-called Hindu majority, Hindu Rashtra. So you do not have any facts because the mainstream media, especially the print media, the mainstream media is pretty biased in its coverage of issues concerning Hindus, and it always seems to take the other side and portrays minorities as victims and Hindus are portrayed as the oppressor. So the kind of the way the mainstream media selectively puts out facts doesn't offer any advantage to the Hindus. Now, coming to electronic media, although the electronic media, the TV channels, the 24 into 7 TV news channels, they claim to be rather nationalistic and support the Hindu causes, but most of them are, pretty loud and over dramatic, and they seem to be doing it for TRPs, but they also offer, little in terms of substantial insight or evidence that Hindus can use to support their claims that Hindus are indeed oppressed in Hindu Rashtra. Now, that's precisely where a book like Hindus in a Hindu Rashtra by Anand Ranganathan steps in. The book gives you startling evidence and real shocking facts about the socio-political, cultural, and legal framework to which Hindus are subjected to day in and day out in a supposed Hindu Rashtra. Now, everything that's in there in this book, every evidence is supported by a reference, a footnote. So the haters can't accuse Anand Ranganathan of being subjective or biased because there are hardly any opinionated statements out here. Ranganathan is stating the bare facts. Like I said, that everything is supported by footnotes, and there's a long list of references at the end of the book which the readers can take a look at. Anand Ranganathan, though, doesn't mince his words when he lashes out at the hypocrisy of the left liberal cabal in not just conveniently ignoring, Hindu issues and causes and brushing them off under the carpet, but also, portraying Hindus as perpetrators and turning a complete blind eye to the historical injustices meted out to the Hindu community. Now, if you were to use one word to define Anand Ranganathan, that would be logical. He has so brought back the art of logical argumentation, the art of, simply arguing logically with evidence and with rational arguments, something which we have lost down the line because most of the debates, mainstream debates, are, dominated by the left liberal cabal, the woke lobby. And the woke lobby, it seems like, knows nothing of logic. Their way of arguing is, apparently, it involves basically casting value judgments at others and, kind of basically shaming anybody who doesn't agree to their viewpoint, who doesn't agree to their opinion. For example, anybody who praises something about Prime Minister Modi's style of governance or praises anything about the policy, about any policy of the BJP government is deemed a bhakt. You are a bhakt, no questions asked. So, this kind of mafia logic is something which the left liberal cabal, the woke lobby is capable of. And it's kind of beyond ridiculous. So they're not really capable of any logic. All they do, like I said, is cast value judgments at people and essentialize their logic essentially involves shaming people who do not agree to their viewpoint. So Anand Ranganathan, then obviously the haters are going to hate him, And they can call him a hater and a Hindutva fascist or whatever and cast those value judgments. But even if you see Anand Ranganathan arguing on TV debates, they cannot counter what he's saying with any factual evidence, because his arguments are so strong and logical. And, the left liberal cabal, like I said, is completely devoid of any logic. So this book is logic is, and those logical arguments are a major strength of this collection. And step by step, chapter by chapter, Anand Ranganathan, dismantles the woke edifice of the oppression being meted out to minorities by the so-called Hindu majority in a Hindu Rashtra. So coming to the book itself, the book is divided into 8 chapters, and I'm going to tell you the name of the chapters one by one. The first chapter is about state control of Hindu temples. Then the second chapter is about injustice towards Kashmiri Hindus. The third chapter talks about the Waqf Act 1995. The fourth chapter is devoted to the RTE Act, the Right to Education Act. The fifth chapter is talking about legislations that appease non-Hindus but target Hindus. Sixth chapter focuses on the judiciary that almost exclusively tries to reform Hinduism. Seventh chapter is about celebrating those who killed and converted millions of Hindus. And the eighth chapter is about the Places of Worship Act 1991. So each of these chapters takes a socio-political aspect of India to prove how the system not just marginalizes Hindu, but goes out of its way to consciously discriminate against the Hindus to appease the minorities. And this system, Anand Ranganathan argues, is independent of whichever political party forms the government at the center. So whether it's a BJP government at the center or the Congress government at the center, there might be minor differences, but the overarching system remains in place. And the overarching framework within which Indian politics operates, this book argues, is the framework of minority appeasement and Hindu bashing. So it's this whole vote game of appeasing the so-called minorities, and Hindus merely become collateral damage. They merely become casualties in the whole process. So the book argues that even though a Hindu majority government at the center, a nationalist government at the center, does make certain amends vis-a-vis Hindus, but even this kind of government is unable to eradicate the system, and it has to sort of toe the line of this system, and it also bends over backwards to appease the minorities and further victimizes Hindu. So there's a lot of rhetoric Anand Ranganathan is saying, vis-a-vis the creation of a Hindu Rashtra and all that, but a lot of it is simply rhetoric. And when it comes to really making decisions on the grounds and issues concerning Hindus, there's a lack of political will, and there's a lack of political imagination to actually walk the talk, even when it comes to the BJP government at the center. Now, some of the issues that the book talks about are already out there in the mainstream public discourse, and they're quite well known. For example, the issue of the state control of Hindu temples, that unlike other religious organizations and places of worship belonging to other religions, the Hindu temples are controlled by the government, whereas when it comes to the places of worship of other religions or the religious organizations, they're controlled by their own people, governing bodies or whatever, but the government has no role in their functioning. But when it comes to Hindu temples, the state exclusively controls the functioning of these places of worship. So this is a topic that's quite well known in the public discourse already. Or for example, there's a chapter devoted to the whole plight of Kashmiri Pandits and the terrible genocide suffered by Kashmiri Pandits, and the way the media and the whole system is silent about it. It tries to marginalize the issue. It tries to trivialize the issue. So some of these issues, these kind of issues, like I said, are already out there in the public discourse, and many Hindus, non-Hindus, whoever are citizens of India will be aware of these issues. For example, there's a new political party called Ekam Sanatan Bharat that has promised to free the temples of state control if it's elected to power. But there are other issues that the book talks about that are not so much, well known by the common citizens of India. I mean, if you are researching these causes or are in the thick of these debates all the time, then you might be aware of these issues. But for an ordinary Hindu, for a common Hindu just going about their jobs, these issues and the facts that Anand Ranganathan gives you vis-a-vis these issues are shocking, to say the least. For example, in the chapter on Waqf Act, Ranganathan talks about how this act paves the way for literally anything and everything being called a Waqf board property, leaving Hindus vulnerable. Now, this chapter tells you that Waqf is the third largest landowner in India after defense and railways. And the land, which is apparently the Waqf land, doesn't have any basis in post independence India. It's all apparently the land that was part of the give and take between the British and the Muslims when the British ruled India. Then another shocking fact is that 77% of Delhi is on Waqf land, including the Delhi High Court, Central Vista, Jawaharlal Nehru Stadium, etc. Now, these facts are quite shocking because, like I said, normal Hindus would not know anything about these things. Now, similarly, in the chapter on Right to Education Act, the RTI, which was, the law regarding right to education, which was passed by the UPA government in 2009. Now, this is, thought of as a pretty normal law, and nobody would imagine that the RTI one is rather shocked to learn that the RTI passed by the Congress government in 2009, many of its provisions selectively apply only to Hindu educational institutions. That is, the minority educational institutions, schools run by minority religions, are outside the purview of most of the provisions of the Right to Education Act. And I'm not making this up, Anand Ranganathan. It's all there in the book, and it's supported by facts and references and footnotes. So if you do not trust the author, you can look at the references and the footnotes. Now, this argues, Ranganathan, has resulted in monopoly of the so-called minority schools, whereas schools run by Hindus, the educational institutions which are run by Hindus are being closed in large numbers due to a shortage of funds, due to a paucity of funds, because of the stringent RTE regulations they are subjected to. And it's certainly not a fair playing ground because everyone knows that, there's a huge percentage of minority-run educational institutions in India, and they're quite mainstream. So there's no logic to exclude them from the provisions of the Right to Education Act, various provisions of the Right to Education Act, and exclusively apply those provisions to educational institutions run by Hindus. It's an unfair playing ground. It's not a level playing ground. So Hindus in Hindu Rashtra by Anand Ranganathan is a tiny collection, barely 100 pages. In fact, you can read this book in one sitting if you like, but its length and the fact that it's tiny actually belies the amount of information and insight this book gives. The depth of information and insight given by this book is simply superb and mind-blowing, and it's pretty compact and dense. So you need time to actually absorb all that information. So I would recommend that this is the kind of book that you need to read a couple of times, and just reading it once would not do justice to the amount of research that has gone into the making of this collection. The best part I liked about Hindus in Hindu Rashtra by Anand Ranganathan is the fact that there's a lot of hidden information, that's being brought out in the public domain through this book. So these are all facts and evidence, but this is the other side of the story that the mainstream media reports, do not provide you. They do not furnish this kind of information. So it's almost like applying, it's almost like filing an RTI under the Right to Information Act and seeking this hidden information. So it gives you a lot of this valuable hidden information. It's a treasure trove of this kind of information, and you completely get to know about the other side of the story. Now, in the chapter Legislations that appease non-Hindus but target Hindus, Ranganathan gives many examples of laws and bills that consciously discriminate against Hindus or seek to reform them while conveniently look the other way when it comes to minorities like Muslims and Christians. Now, similarly, the chapter on judiciary gives you many examples of cases over the recent years to show that, how the judiciary is sort of biased against Hindus. It is anti-Hindu. It singles out Hindus and systematically discriminates against them while delivering the judgments. Now, Hindus in a Hindu Rashtra, I would say, to sum up, is a must read by all Hindus and even non-Hindus. It's a must read by anyone who can sense the blatant discrimination being meted out to Hindus in a so-called Hindu Rashtra. And the amazing thing about this book is that, it actually instills you with critical thinking skills. So it kind of gives you pointers to do your own research, and it challenges you to revisit your own conceptual frameworks and read between the lines, when it comes to mainstream media reports. So next time when you read a report about, the Hindus being perpetrators and injustices being meted out to minorities, or, you read about some court judgment in which Hindus are indicted, you would start seeing a pattern, and you would would start making your own judgments, looking for your own evidence and joining the dots instead of simply uncritically going by the media perspective. So I think that's the biggest achievement of this book. Unlike a lot of humanities style texts written by the left liberals and the woke lobby, which are full of subjective opinions and value judgments, and which are kind of an exercise in propaganda making. They try to brainwash the reader, and they are very opinionated. They just try to brainwash the reader without any evidence. This text by Anand Ranganathan is the complete opposite of that. It's giving you a lot of factual evidence. It's very compelling. It's very hard hitting, but it is also kind of telling you to make your own judgments, and it's not really telling you how to think, how to frame your thinking, but it's giving you a lot of solid evidence and pointers for doing your own research. So I would definitely recommend this book. It's a must read. Guys, thank you so much for listening. Bye for now. If you like the content, please to subscribe to the channel, and please to press the like button. Thanks for listening. Bye for now.